Good morning. Welcome to Devil's Den in Wiltshire for the time being at least, of these daily Going to Ground films. It's been a joy to take these morning journeys with you, and thank you so much for watching. And the films are going to stay up on YouTube, and I hope to continue with occasional posts over the summer and then begin hopefully with a new season. And whether for another 100, I don't know, but in due course. So please do stay subscribed, and thank you so much, those of you who've written to me, and it's been a joy to connect like this, even in the midst of this oddly pressurized and contained season. We've been able to explore some things that have freed our minds, hopefully a little bit. It certainly has been good for me. I've filmed here before, and as you can see behind me, this is an imposing spot, and I'm going to read for you my weekly blog piece, as I sometimes do. These are going to carry on, and they're gradually compiling sketches for my next book, English Grounds, which is going to hopefully be out in 2 or 3 years, maybe slightly sooner depending on how many I can write. But that explores my love of the relationship between landscape and faith and nation, place and the natural world. So those are going to continue over the summer as well. And each week on a Sunday I've often read that digest of our conversations during the week. I'm rather pleased. I think I've just identified a new bird. Well, not a new bird entirely, you understand, but new to me. And I think I'm right in saying, I always get this wrong, I think it was a corn bunting. Let's call it a corn bunting. It was, there's a field of oats behind me here, can you see? And it was perched on the oat stalk and had a lovely trilling sound, which I just checking online seems to be a corn bunting. In fact, that was the name that arose in my mind when I saw it, because it was a bit like a skylark, but sounded different and was perched low rather than up high. And behind me, look, you can see, I hope, that wonderful rippling effect in the fields of barley on the other side, which it's like a sea at this point when it's fully grown and the wind passes over it, and the fields are beginning to get that sort of scorched, slightly tan tone, which shows them becoming ripe unto harvest. Lovely time. Anyway, so I'm going to read for you The Old Eternal Rocks. On Monday, a friend from London called, passing through Marlborough to visit his mother. Jim suggested strolling to Devil's Den, an imposing dolmen, now the only remnant of a Neolithic long barrow that, tantalisingly, could still be seen a century ago, extending back like a leg under a blanket. Subsequently levelled by ploughing, apparently, although this is hard to countenance given the interest in such places by then. The main clue to its reformation is an etched date, 1921, in a slab propping up the two that act as pallbearers to a hulking 17-ton capstone, there it is, which hangs impossibly in the air. This idea of a raised hanging stone is one possible origin of the word henge, which first appears in the 12th century Historia Anglorum of Henry, Archdeacon of Huntingdon, in his listing of Stanhenges as the second of his 4 wonders of England. The conjuring feat that elevated Devil's Den is certainly wondrous, and to me uncanny, being an embodied reminder of a perplexing dream I've known since childhood, whenever running a high temperature, of a colossal boulder oddly made light. Jim and I don't often meet. The conversation runs easily and enjoyably deep when we do. It's 4 weeks since I've walked this way and already the track is unrecognisable. Soft spurs of toad flags. Purple puffs of scabious have grown on the bank alongside several others I can't yet identify. As I write, a copy of Geoffrey Grigson's The Englishman's Flora has arrived with the post. One of you recommended that to me and I'm really looking forward to reading it. The Grigsons apparently lived in the Chalk Valley in Wiltshire, so that's going to be well worth reading. Everything has developed that sketchy, overgrown fringe that midsummer brings to the countryside. And I find myself feeling neglectful of this familiar path, ridiculously almost hurt that it has progressed without me. But nature has no lasting city, and there is consolation in time's ceaseless passage, as with all things entirely beyond our control. This is why I think we find the coast so restful, marking as it does the limit of each territorial conquest. The early chroniclers of our national life were only too conscious of this. Indeed, repeated waves of invasion were often the cue for their histories, which invariably sought to interpret successive calamities within the will and judgment of God. For 1,000 years, from Gildas to Milton, whose History of Britain, written in 1670, was really the last of these, English history considered the tide of our affairs as though it were an extension of the Book of Kings, weighing human hubris against divine piety. Henry of Huntingdon's famous account of King Canute is emblematic of this, and of personal interest to me, given that one of my forebears as Bishop of Ramsbury, St. Bertwald, was reputedly that monarch's close political advisor. I imagine him by the shore, wondering what on earth to say. At the height of his ascendancy, Henry writes, Canute ordered his chair to be placed on the seashore as the tide was coming in. Then he said to the rising tide, "You are subject to me, as the land on which I am sitting is mine, and no one has resisted my overlordship with impunity. I command you, therefore, not to rise on my land, nor to presume to wet the clothing of your or limbs of your master." The setup is beautifully put, as is what comes next when he deadpans. But the sea came up as usual. It disrespectfully drenched the king's feet and shins. It's the as usual that bursts the balloon so perfectly, and which provoked a new humility in Canute, who exclaimed, "Let all the world know that there is no king save him by whose will heaven, earth and sea obey eternal laws." Thereafter, Henry relates that the crown was never worn, his crown was never worn, but adorned instead an image of his crucified Lord. These narratives are rarely social histories. Their purpose is to assess each ruler by the same spiritual yardstick. In the 20th century, Chesterton argued that politics still stumbled on the old eternal rocks. Both conservatives and progressives preoccupied with immediate time rather than eternity, dooming them to endless revolution. From the midst of war, Orwell, no admirer of Chesterton's relentless paradoxes, acknowledged that England's future could only be gained and reframed by some equivalent of the kingdom of heaven. "We've got to be children of God," he pondered, "even if the God of the prayer book no longer exists." This evening at Devil's Den, sat on the capstone, time is weightless. We are briefly, mercifully suspended. God bless you, friends, as you go to ground.